The Witch in Command by Janson Davies. Chapter 1. Arrival at the Edge. The stars framed her silhouette like nervous candlelight. Athena Standlesh stood on the command deck of the Saga Quest, Earth's premier deep-range vessel. No one had expected her, least of all Admiral Renz, who now watched her with the polite terror reserved for living legends. Newly minted Fleet Admiral Athena Standlesh had no military record, no traceable command chain, yet the High Council had overridden every protocol to place her here. Rumors spoke of her lineage: Salem blood, vanished texts, whispers of spells stitched into war logs. They said she was in her 40s. She looked 20, and so beautiful it made an observer's eyes hurt. Her platinum-white hair reflected light like flowing ice crystals, and her blue eyes were of a color never born in nature. Athena didn't speak much that first day. Her voice was velvet, worn thin, measured, unyielding. She walked the passageways like they belonged to her future, inspecting weapon nodes with fingertips that left sparks in their wake. Lieutenant Varen, a rising star in systems analysis, watched her closely. He didn't believe in magic or mysticism, but when the ship's shielding adjusted itself before a solar flare hit, without any input, he started asking questions. Behind Athena's cold grace shimmered something deeper, something old and waiting. The crew would soon learn. Command was more than tactics and strategy. It could be spellbound. Chapter 2. First Strike. The alien fleet shimmered into range, an arrogant scatter of ships, warped in geometry and veiled by dimensional noise. Protocol demanded a scan, a formation shift, then diplomacy. Athena skipped all three. Pattern Zeta. Divert core power into the spell rotors, she ordered. Spell rotors weren't part of the ship's specs. Yet beneath Deck 12, the reactor pulsed as if acknowledging her voice, rerouting energy through hastily built conduits carved in glyph-like spirals. Lieutenant Varen watched the combat dashboard crackle with unfamiliar symbols. Defense systems responded, not with missiles, but with vibrations of intent. The crew felt it. The ship itself was thinking in a new dialect. The aliens fired, multi-phase torpedoes, fast and complex. But the Saga Quest was no longer operating by Newtonian rules. Shields folded inwards, stitched by eldritch code. A plasma barrage struck one enemy cruiser and split it across both time and angle. "What did we just do?" Renz whispered. Athena gave no answer. She traced one symbol in the air, a spiral pierced by a triangle, and the alien flagship warped out of existence. Not exploded. Erased. Then, like dominoes, the entire alien fleet ceased to exist, gone without a trace. Cheers erupted, brief and nervous. Varen didn't join in. He was already decoding combat logs, searching for the source of the arcane commands embedded in the ship's logic. They were too elegant to be improvised, too ancient to be military. Athena stood at the helm, her eyes distant. She knew they had won, but a supernatural entity watching from behind the stars had just awakened. Chapter 3. An Entity Awakens. The crew had slept restlessly. Quick sleep, but not deeply, just long enough to reset systems, rejuvenate their bodies, and quiet the adrenaline. But when they woke, something was missing. Recollections didn't match. Varen's log showed him reporting to engineering, yet he swore he'd been in medbay. Officer Heldon found his sister's name etched into his bunk. He didn't have a sister. Time seemed to bleed sideways. Athena stood in the observation ring, watching stars flicker unnaturally. "Something is coming," she murmured. Her tone wasn't fearful. It was reverent. She knew it. The entity wrapped in the ruins of alien worlds had latched onto their thoughts, drifting between quantum folds and the shadows of memory. Captain Renz authorized a diagnostic scan. The data returned corrupted but alive. Behind static-laced telemetry was a pattern, rhythmic, hungry, intelligent. Something was mimicking the crew's emotional bonds to stay tethered. It didn't speak. It replicated. Athena requested silence across the decks. She traced a ward across the ship's AI cortex, whispering in a language even the central core didn't understand. Varen, watching, realized her method wasn't defense. It was containment. But the entity responded. Gravity bent briefly, lights dimmed in Morse-like pulses. Every mirror on board showed someone else's reflection. And from deep space came a broadcast, not words but memories, stolen ones, childhood joys, last goodbyes, secrets never shared, now played back through ship intercoms. The crew broke into fragments of confusion. Athena didn't blink. We gave it a taste of magic. We've invited its hunger in, she said. Now we must convince it to leave. Chapter 4. The Spellfold Gambit. Athena secluded herself in the upper observatory, surrounded by crystalline data nodes and discarded logic cores. She was building something, not just a spell, but a multi-layered construct that bent both science and witchcraft. A spellfold, 4 layers of bound intent, designed to trap the entity across folded dimensions of remembrances, matter, time, and thought. Each layer demanded sacrifice. Layer 1 disrupted temporal loops. Officer Salin volunteered, offering a week of her life rewritten to serve as stabilizer. Her memories shifted. She now recalled a childhood she'd never had. Layer 2 bent perception. The ship's AI was fragmented, its core rewritten to think in symbolic patterns. It began speaking only in metaphor, at once beautiful and unnerving. Layer 3 required emotional resonance. Athena took Varen's strongest memory, his mother's final song, and sealed it into the spell core. He forgot her face, but the pattern stabilized. The 4th layer was Athena's alone. She opened a rift inside herself, not physical, but metaphysical. Her presence fragmented across timelines, anchoring the trap. Her eyes glowed with light not bound to spectrum. Her voice echoed across deck speakers even when she wasn't speaking. The entity tried to flee, but the spell was already in motion. Reality bent. Time shimmered. Every crew member felt themselves stretched across possibilities. For an instant they glimpsed who they might have been in other lives, and then it was gone. The entity folded into oblivion, bound by imagery it could no longer steal. Silence returned. The ship floated above Saturn's rings, intact but altered. The spell was complete, but Athena's presence had grown translucent. Sacrifice, after all, wasn't always visible. Chapter 5. Vanishing Point. The crew emerged from the fold, dazed but whole. Memories knitted back together, not perfectly but gently, like healed fractures in an old ship's hull. Officer Salin remembered 2 birthdays she'd never had. Varine could no longer hum his mother's melody, but he swore he felt it humming somewhere in the stars. The High Council demanded a debrief. Fleet Admiral Standlesh appeared before them not in person, but as projection, light stitched with intention. She declined promotions, medals, titles. "I was never meant to command power," she said, "only to guide it past ruin." They didn't understand, but they applauded. She smiled once, briefly, and then turned. Her final act was silent. She opened a doorway not through physics, but through symbolism, a portal carved from myth and quantum reverence. She stepped through without goodbye. Renz later claimed her departure caused the Saturn ring to flicker, like a blink. Varen didn't speak of her again, though in his private logs he added a new encryption key, a spiral pierced by a triangle. Weeks passed, then whispers spread. A cargo ship reported an anomaly near Neptune, a woman walking in vacuum, leaving spells in her wake. A group of children on Ceres began drawing symbols they had never learned, and from the old Earth archives, forbidden Salem records resorted themselves, revealing forgotten texts once sealed by war. The myth of Athena Standlesh began, not as a commander, but as a conjurer of impossibility. Magic, once buried, found breath again, and across the cosmos, humanity started listening to something older than itself. The end.